Hi everyone, my name is Sagar Joshi and today we're going to look at Power BI Embedded. What exactly is Power BI Embedded? You might have heard of a cool tool known as Power BI through which you can design some awesome visuals and then use it for your organization and customers. Power BI Embedded is a flavor of Power BI specifically meant for SaaS and product companies. You can embed visuals which you develop in Power BI inside of your applications using this technology. Power BI Embedded is as powerful as Power BI, which helps you to deliver rich visuals and analytics for your customers and applications. Obviously, that is going to result in better experience for you, the developers, and also your customers. Power BI Embedded also has a few super capabilities of its own, like edit and create mode, row-level security implementations, and then many more such scenarios that you as a SaaS company can implement inside of your application. Just like Power BI Embedded is a truly cloud-based and cross-platform solution to help you get started for delivering rich analytics into your application without a lot of coding and without a lot of efforts as well. Now let's take a quick look on the experience side. On the left hand side, you actually see the actual powerbi.com website. If you go to the browser and type powerbi.com, it will open your tenant of Power BI where you host all the reports and their workspaces. On the right hand side, if you see, it does look similar, but it's actually your own website which actually has embedded reports from Power BI into your own application. And the right hand side is actually very specifically a flavor of Power BI meant for SaaS companies and product companies through which they can embed the visuals into their own applications. So what do you really need while getting started with Power BI Embedded for your organization? First, you need a development environment, and in the development environment, you actually need a tool called as Power BI Desktop, which is absolutely free, through which you can author your Power BI reports. Then you would want to share and publish the reports onto the powerbi.com website, for which you will need a Power BI Pro tenant. A special requirement for Power BI Embedded is to have a master account, right, which also needs a Power BI Pro license, and this account has to be created in the Azure portal using Azure Active Directory. When you're ready to move into production, it is recommended that you have dedicated capacity attached to your workspaces for hosting your Power BI reports. That dedicated capacity has to be allocated again from the Azure portal. An important note is that make sure that your Power BI Pro tenant and your Azure tenants are exactly the same, so that at a later stage there is no difficulty in you to attach capacity to your workspaces. Now let's see a timeline-wise approach on how would you actually go ahead with developing a Power BI embedded solution. Initially, you would create the reports in Power BI Desktop. Then you would publish the report into powerbi.com website. The next stage is to actually create the master account which your application will use to authenticate itself with the Power BI service. And on the next stage, you actually create a Power BI embedded capacity from Azure portal, which basically means a dedicated space or a hosting capacity for your reports to run. Then you can actually embed the reports into your application using very few details like the report ID, the workspace ID, and the credentials of your master account from the Azure AD. Report ID and workspace ID can be found out from the powerbi.com website or from the URL when you're navigating your Power BI workspaces. And once you're able to embed successfully the reports into your own applications, then you can enrich the application with implementations like row level security and edit create mode for Power BI embedded reports. Now let's see through whiteboarding some of the scenarios which you might have to think about while you're developing the Power BI embedded reports. We'll look at some deployment architectures, we'll look at tenancy and workspaces, and we'll also look at monitoring capacity. Let's go to Microsoft Whiteboard for that. First of all, your customers do not need any Power BI licenses to log into your application. They can just log into your app just the way they are logging in today without the need to have or own any Power BI embedded licenses. On the other side, what you as a solution company will have to do is create a master account, and then it authenticates with the Power BI services to identify your application. So your customers can continue to log into your application without any changes, and you can continuously or innovatively enable Power BI experiences for them within your application, right? Let's look at some of the tenancy models, right? There are two types of tenancy models, which basically means how you host and segregate your customers. One is a multi-tenant model. In a multi-tenant model, basically you are able to host many customers into a single embedded capacity. Now, what do you mean by that? Once you are able to create reports for your customers, it is recommended that you create workspaces into your PowerBI.com tenant as per the customer. Now, let's say you have workspace 1 for customer 1, workspace 2 for customer 2, workspace 3 for customer 3, and so on and so forth. Now, when you allocate capacity from the Azure portal, you're able to associate that capacity either to a single workspace, or you're able to associate that capacity to multiple workspaces. Now, attaching multiple workspaces from Power BI to a single capacity and from the Azure portal is called as a multi-tenant model. In a single tenant model of deployment of the Power BI reports, where you have a workspace and then corresponding reports inside of that workspace, and on the Azure portal you allocate a dedicated capacity, and it's a one-to-one relation, which basically means one workspace is attached to only one capacity. There are no other workspaces, right? And let's say if this is for customer 1, a single workspace being hosted in single capacity is a single tenant model. You'll have to do a similar thing for all your customers. So if it's a customer 2, there'll be a single workspace for your customer, and then that will be allocated to a new dedicated capacity called as capacity 2 from the Azure portal, and so on and so forth. So these are the two capacity or hosting models that you can have, which you can design using Power BI embedded for your solution, and that totally depends on how the requirements are for your application in terms of tenancy, data segregation, and isolation. Now let's come to one of the main topics, which is capacity planning, right? From Azure portal, you can create multiple capacities ranging from A1 to A6, and you can look up the documentation and understand that how much power do you get in A6, or hosting capacity do you get in an A1, and A6, and there are multiple tiers between A1 and A6, which is A2, A3, A4, and A5. Sometimes developer asks us, hey, which capacity shall I choose from application? And we say it depends, right? Depends on certain factors like reports in your application, like what mode they use. Well, there are two modes to design a report: direct query and import. And you can read about them on the PowerBI.com website. Reports are one of the scenarios. How many visuals do they really have in them, right? And the most important point that we always recommend to our developers or our partners is to actually look at load testing, right? So we always recommend that whether you're a single tenant or a multi-tenant model company, always do load testing on your reports and then attaching the capacity, which will help you to identify which of the capacity SKUs are actually right for your application. And this way you are sure that which capacity is actually going to deliver best experience to your customers, right? So this is definitely going to be very useful. Now, how to actually find out the numbers related to your capacity. Now there's a website, there's an application that you can use. Imagine like this is your powerbi.com website. Let me just zoom this a little bit. And then you can go to the apps section and say get apps. Inside of the get apps, if you just search for capacity, you will find that there's a Power BI premium capacity widget or application that you can download, and that will give you more details around how to look up the KPIs or metrics for your allocated capacity, how much CPU was used, how much memory was used for the expected load. Now let's look at a website called as Power BI Embedded Playground. I highly recommend this website for you to go and try and explore functionality related to Power BI Embedded, right? You can play around with some of the functionalities as edit mode. Through edit mode, you are able to, now this is the Power BI Embedded report and this is a code. Imagine this is your website and here you have actually embedded the report as well, right? Now in an embedded mode, the user who is using the application on the fly can change the visuals, and this is a capability that you can provide through the Power BI SDK, the Power BI Embedded SDK. Now let's say I want to change this number box to a visual called as gauge. See, I was able to do that. I also want to change this to gauge. The user will be able to do that through the APIs that you provide or the capabilities that you provide. And Power BI Embedded SDK enables you, the application developers, to deliver this functionality. Well, the customer or the user was able to now self-service edit the report on the fly without having to reach out to you, which saves a lot of time and effort. And he or she can then just save the report, and then it will actually save the original copy of the report in the workspace as well, right? So these were some of the points that we thought are important from understanding Power BI embedded capacity or Power BI embedded functionality. A lot of developers whom we talk to have this common set of questions on how to approach tenancy, deployment, monitoring and capacity for Power BI embedded, and what exactly do they need to get started, right? Power BI embedded also has a lot of samples on GitHub. They also have SDKs for JavaScript, .NET, and Python, through which you can get started with your application or embedding reports for Power BI embedded inside of your solution. Thank you. Please feel free to post your questions and comments in the comment section, and we look forward to answering them. Thank you.